Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Good to see you all. Hope you're having a lovely week and had a good weekend. Thank you for joining me, Notification Gang. Appreciate y'all being here. Won't lie to you, I don't really have much planned for you today. Didn't do much prep. But happy to talk with you for a bit. Go over a couple of things from the last week. And answer any questions you guys have about, I don't know, anything, random stuff. So it'll be probably a shorter one today, but thank you regardless for coming. How y'all doing? Got some good dances in there, Twitch. I see y'all on YouTube. Welcome in, Maverick, Baltzen, Pedro, Waybreak. Good to see you guys. How was everybody's weekend? How many of y'all did some good stuff, had some good times, hung out with some people? I literally have nothing today. I mainly wanted to go over some of the stuff that I covered in this week's Space Games Weekly, so we can look at Starship Simulator. That video is not out yet. I'm hoping it'll be out tomorrow, but it will be out. It is being worked on. Made a new friend in SC and now running Crude Mole. That sounds like fun. The weekend was filled with fighting cargo boxes. Same here. We didn't have a very successful run on Saturday, and I haven't tried since. Got a pretty good weekend. Donated 32 inches of hair. Wow. Must have been growing that out for a while. Hot for you? Hot and sweaty? Yeah, same. Very hot here. Very hot here. It just reached 50 degrees here in Turkey over the weekend for the first time ever. So down in the south, it is cooking. Dealing with a heavy fire season this year too. Fast, and it was a grindy weekend. Were you in game? Need to know more about The Expanse. Yeah, I wish there was some more info on that. Shipment recovery missions have been pretty easy when you grab them. That's good. Yeah, 50 degrees Celsius. It's a historical high. Luckily, it wasn't nowhere near where we are, but down in the south of the country. Just watching the video about the Expanse game, and it looks awesome. Oh, it was from a little while ago. Yeah, I'm excited for that game. There's some nice concept art they put out every day at this time. Really? How do they put out concept art every day? The game has worked well for you through a lot of issues in the past, but this one, no bueno. Log in, pick up a mission, try it, doesn't work, log out. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Maybe we'll jump in and give it a double check today. Hasn't really been anything going on. I mean, it's just how Star Citizen is this year. Not really much to cover. Oh, I was thinking we could look at how the game's been doing throughout the year, funding and player numbers wise. Your concierge armor looks cool. Is that the black and gold one? Bass, and you're in game all weekend. What were you who were you grinding for? Oh, that's the one with the red eyeballs. Yeah, it's an interesting armor. I don't know about the lit up eyes, but it looks cool. Morning, Graven Song. Seeing as how they said the Apollo's coming out, do you think they will release the first drones with it? I don't know. Working on a video about that right now. I do not know. I hope so, but there's no way to know. They haven't talked about that stuff in the monthly reports at all. And they haven't said anything about it in a long time. I know they got drones working. A while ago they got drones working for Squadron. So it's just a matter of, do they have the time and the manpower to move it over to move it over to Star Citizen. Oh, you finished ArcWarp. Nice, Fasten. Just going back to the monthly report, there's nothing, at least in this most recent one, about anything that would have to do with a medical rework. So, I mean, we'll see. Maybe there will be something in the monthly report released next week. Hey, Thaki. And double check the ones before too. June was a very short one in terms of gameplay. Let's see. Vehicle radar and scanning, quantum interdiction, item recovery, control surfaces, medical beds, no, heal radiation damage. That's really it. You know, I don't think I caught it when we first looked at this monthly report. But this is the Apollo. This looks like maybe a gray box, or even close to getting close to Lot 0 interior shot of the Apollo. I wonder if they're going to remove drones. What if they just remove drones from the Apollo concept? You You wonder if they'll introduce it with the Apollo, as they delayed the ship several times, and the only thing that makes the ship unique is really the drone. Yeah. The way that they described it happening before was that there would be a cover that would go over the bed, and then while it's over the bed, the person's body would be transmitted inside and just kind of appear in there. You think they'll release it with drones? Gonna be reminiscent of the Reclaimer's Claw? Has to have some sort of functionality. I still haven't been able to find the line where they said that they weren't gonna release ships without their gameplay, but I know it exists out there. I can just never remember where they said it. It was in a Calling All Devs. Oh. Looking forward to Expanse. Wonder if it feels like ME, but it seems a bit more intense. Yeah, it looks like it has a lot of influence from Mass Effect. Morning, Greg. What if the ship has that level of medical capability? In tier 1 bed, I think the Carrack does. Carrack, 890 jump. Does the tack? No, tier 3 beds in the tack. Idris. Oh no, the Carrack is tier 2. I guess it's just the Idris. It is in and out. It is a smaller ship. Doesn't seem like enough to hold the ship back though. Yeah, the medical gameplay is really missing. That's why I don't think they should do it unless they're updating medical gameplay, but not really much to do with that. I mean, even what they've told us, there's not much planned. At least back when they put medical into the game, it was 3.15, I think. Oh, we'd all be excited for it without drones, but they gotta deliver something with it. Thank you very much. Fresh espresso, gross. Hey, Bolton, how you been, dude? Good to see you. Been a little while. Thank you for coming back as a potato. How's settling in been? How's a new place? I'm talking about the Apollo right now. But yeah, I guess this is the most recent update we've had on it. I did not realize they did this. Now, these bays are supposed to be modular. You're supposed to be able to switch them out for tier 2 or tier 3 beds, but I don't know how they're going to do that. Yeah, it said before the end of the year. That's why we're looking at it right now. You rock. You know that? Alton. Shout out to the Toes gang, man. Thank you for dropping 10 memberships in the chat for YouTube. Cheers to you, my dude. Means a lot. It goes very far. Thank you. We're happy to get out of here and back to our home in the US with our Toes gang whiteboard so that we can honor those who keep this going. Everybody keeps this going. If you're here, you keep it going. Not to discredit you. Here's where they talk about the modularity.
To scan space to find bodies on other injured people. I've seen that some people might be interested into the number of toilets. So there's 2 toilets in the ship.
You've done this show before, Quarantine.
Yeah, and there's 2 ejection beds as well. It's basically like on the Constellation. It's ejection pods that also act like beds. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing about this is the 2 rooms where the medical beds are. They're going to be modular, so you can swap them out depending on what level of medical gameplay you want to do. And alongside the pages later today, there is actually going to be an updated design post that talks about medical gameplay and sort of, because we haven't really talked about it since the Death of a Spaceman post, so it's sort of like a short update post to that.
You're getting ahead of me.
Oh, sorry. I'll stop talking.
All right. But the next question is going to be about those medical rooms and everything. But before we get to that, I want to ask Paul a question. Paul, we've talked on this show several times about the process of birthing these concepts and how some are easier than others. What was this particular delivery like?
So, some ships are like, in the past we've had like emergency C-sections. This one, I say, was a good natural birth. This was. I
mean, I think during FPS encounters and stuff, or if you wanted to just like sit somewhere and be a public facility, having 6 tier 3 beds could be valuable. You could take in a lot more customers more quickly.
We had the birthing pool. Everything went naturally, it all flowed. And
thanks for the bits.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable actually. This one, it's actually gone well. Even though there's always.
Thank you so much, Cole. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
But it's been heavily on top of this one.
Basil Wharf becoming a member over on YouTube. Cheers to you, buddy. 9 months in, that's a YouTube baby. Much love to you,
buddy. The shape and the sort of silhouette. Chris was like, "Well, it's not RSI enough." So I just dived back in and we just started messing with more of the shapes and just getting more of that core architecture in there. And so pretty good process.
I think the hardest bit was coming up with a name,
but
like the names for it.
Oh yes.
I feel sorry.
When it was between our writers and then other people were stuff like this. It's neat when you can see it be a collaborative process like that. But yeah, And then there's a debate on Spectrum right now about whether it's Medivac with an I or whether it's Medevac with an E.
Yeah, we had that as well.
Medevac.
We had the same debate, yeah.
Yeah.
Medical evacuation.
We did.
Hopefully we're consistent at least.
No, which is really funny because we had that debate internally for days, and then we make the decision, we go out, and then we see the same debate show up in the community. It's like, that's how it works. All right, so now I want to talk about the interior for a bit. We actually have an image. You guys won't be able to see it, but I'm certain that you've seen it before. We've got an image of the layout of the interior here. So let's talk a bit about the layout.
So the picture that we're looking at is right here, looking that way. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of this hallway, the rest of this room, but they've got it centered with only one bed. So here's that hallway. Here's that front door that leads forward to the bridge. You can see the other bed bay over here. And it looks like this is a bathroom. Another bathroom over here. 2 bathrooms, that's a lot.
Layout here. At the front, obviously, like most of our ships, we have the crew and the bridge. Like every RSI ship, at the very least, we've got the crew and the bridge. And I see a crew lift, very reminiscent of the Constellation series. Talk to us about the bridge.
I think obviously I can see an image of the reflection of your TV. Yeah. So it looks like it's the layout that I provided right at the start of the process.
Yes, the top down layout.
So it has changed a little bit since then because we had to extend the ship just to factor in all the components. So, but yeah, in terms of the bridge, it's fairly straightforward. You know, we sort of went backwards and forwards. On things like visibility, because we all know fans, you know, because I tried to get some extra struts in. Corrigan was like, no, get them out. And then we sort of worked on adding, once we fixed that up, then just adding some additional visibility sort of to the left and right of the sort of the corners of the ship. And then again, it was just a matter of taking some of the styling from the Polaris interior and factoring that in. Obviously, you can't see that from the layout, but and then we've got the beds, and then to be honest, we're just doing a little bit of a refactor now, just this week, just to tie up some loose ends on some of the interior space, just so that when it gets to the artists, it's super clear on what they need to achieve.
So the big standout feature in this is the med bays. So John, you began to touch on it just a few moments ago. Talk to us about the med bays, and you and Corrigan for that matter, and Paul, all three, jump in, about the med bays and their modularity.
Yeah, so you can see they're essentially mirror images of each other. So when I say med bays, I talk about them both at the same time. Part of the medical gameplay post talks about different levels of injury and healing, and different equipment can do different levels of things. So on a abandoned moon that might have this old ancient medical facility, that might only be able to do certain levels of healing. Like it might be able to stop some bleeding, patch you up enough to get you somewhere properly. It's not going to be able to replace a ruined limb or multiple injuries. And that's something we want to do with the Apollo. So in, I think, that shot, there's 3 beds on every side. So these are 3 of the sort of, I can't remember which way the numbering we went in the design post. I think 3 tier 3 beds.
I think it's 1. Well,
it's 1 or 3.
Yeah. Tier 3 is the recovering from minor injuries, like limbs being damaged.
Yeah.
Tier 1 is recovering from near-death experiences and fatal injuries. So tier 1 is the more severe.
Yeah, so these are essentially tier 3 medical beds. So you've got 6 medical beds that you can heal a variety of just general injuries that you'd expect people to find. If you want to be a bit more serious, you can swap those rooms out for some tier 2 rooms, which only have 2 beds on each side, but they're bigger beds, they can do more. And then if you really want to be full doctor, full surgeon, you swap them out for tier 1 rooms. And those are your big isolation rooms, big surgery rooms that can do the whole thing that you would find on like in Hurston's Big Planets medical facilities, but in a small ship. But you can only do one at a time in those beds. You can mix and match, so you could have one tier 1 on one side and the tier 3 on the other, so you can provide some flexibility, and it sort of allows you to tailor how you want to play that. But it's all about just letting you sort of decide the level of response you want to give.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see what the players are going with in terms of configuration. Like, if players really want to be basic 3-on-3 or 2-on-1 or this kind of stuff.
Now, in the past, when we've done ships that have a modular nature, like the Endeavor, it had the landing bay and the medical bay and everything. Those modules were provided separately. Switching these beds out, is that standard with any Apollo?
It's just the tier 3 ones at the moment. I don't know how we're gonna plan on that. That's one for the marketing department to decide on. Once we've sort of nailed that down a bit more, we can decide how much sort of extra gameplay they give and whether you get a set with that base purchase or they're additional.
So right now, and JJ, why don't you come back to me real quick? Right now, I do want to confirm that when the RSI promotion starts in earnest towards the end of this broadcast, there are no modules that are being provided for the promotion at this time. The ship that you get will have the tier 3 beds, and how we choose to roll out the tier 1 and 2, we will decide once the tech for that comes online and we know more. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever talked about that, so that's something that they'll need to do this year.
We wanted to preserve until that tech comes online and it's developed further before we tried to ascribe value to them and stuff like that. So for right now, it's just the ships in the tier 3 beds. Now, you did mention, you mentioned the tier 1, the tier 3 and stuff like that. That's related to the medical gameplay shipyard post that's going to go up later today. Obviously, we wrote a whole post so we didn't have to sit here and talk about it, but it isn't up now. So give us the Cliff Notes version. How does medical gameplay work today in 3.2, and how are we thinking it's going to work going forward?
Yes,
we already know this. Okay, let's look for talk about the drones.
A little bit about some of the. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of good ones there. I did a lot of good ones. Okay. All right.
Those were the ones that got released, you see. So those are the ones I was happy with. There was a whole bunch that I hated, and they just got left.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the features for this ship. This ship uses a drone. This ship utilizes drones and these medical stretchers. Talk to us about the drones. How are they different from the drones that we?
Bad News Gaming, I think, is might be Bad News Baron, the Star Citizen creator.
We've talked about before, like the mining drones or whatnot. What do these drones do, and how do they play into the Apollo experience?
I can talk about at a functional level. The drones are drones. They can be controlled remotely, or they can be semi-autonomous. But these ones are specifically designed for. I was going to say capturing, but that's probably an aggressive tone for.
Morning, Brutus.
Rescuing injured people particularly in space, where they're just floating around, so they can be sent out. They come out the bottom of the ship, come encase the person in this sort of protective field. Because obviously in your space, you might be with a cracked suit. You probably don't want to just be left in the void until you get back in the ship. So it sort of encases them, goes back in the ship, and it's sort of quite a neat system. I don't think we really showed it in any detail, but they go in the bottom of the ship and they sort of get filtered to the underside of the beds, and the drone attaches onto the underside of the beds, and they come up through the beds, and the beds all sort of open up to take them, and then the drone goes back down, leaves them on the bed, so it sort of makes a nice seal to put them in this sort of healing bed, and then they can go off and do it again. Obviously, if you've got 6 beds, you can fill it up with 6 people. You only get 2 drones with it, and they are just for that. It's not like the Vulcan's drones that you can repurpose into doing other things. They are purely for capturing and rescuing bodies.
So can I?
You're not going to go. You can't use them to go up to another ship and rescue the missiles off them and put them back into your ship.
Not with that
But there's
attitude, Mister.
So
And oh, go ahead.
and they are sort of the stretcher in the same way. So if they're not being semi-autonomous, unless I'm just speaking nonsense now, they are one and the same.
This is whatever you guys want it to be. Like in terms of the art style and the art and the design, it's fairly flexible.
Yeah, stop it being a remote controlled drone. It's essentially a hovering platform that you can maneuver.
Yeah, that's
on the
also
planet.
one of the reasons that we put a big ramp at the back with a big airlock is, if needed, like the drone can't be used properly, you just push it on, go in.
Yeah, it blurs the line between a drone and a stretcher. Is it a drone or is it a stretcher if it's being pushed by someone?
For a regular game, this doesn't really sound all that complicated. For a game like Star Citizen, and at the state Star Citizen is, it sounds like it's going to take months of testing to get working right.
Now, so the drones are how you bring people on. How do you bring people off? If that's a necessity.
Well, hopefully, if you've done a good enough job, they can get off by themselves. But you could use there's space in there for those drone stretchers to go into the room and get people back into them and take them. Say you've only got tier 3 beds and someone just keeps bleeding out. You've transported them from where you found them across to a big medical facility for more, like they've got a tier 1 injury that they need healing. There's only so much time you can keep them alive in your ship with tier 3 equipment. You put them back on the drone stretcher and you take them, like you see with an air ambulance that lands at a hospital. It lands, they come out, you take them in to get healed for good.
Okay. It's that time. It's that time in every one of these shows. Will it fit?
Yeah, I don't know. Sounds a little weird. Have they ever showed visuals of the drone stretchers? They have. So if you look up the Apollo drones, this is what the bed looked like. Simple, straightforward. It's at least the concept of it. And then this is concept art. Shows one of them in transit. Kind of see it right there. Right here. In bed. And it's got a little doorway that opens on the bottom of the ship. But this is all concept art. We'll see how it actually plays out. Apollo Medivac, curious. What will it be like? Shepard drones will have a choice of either hero or renegades there. Mass Effect joke. What is this? Oh, this is from 2024. What I'm worried is that you're just flying a ship around that people just hop into, heal, and then hop out of. And you don't want to take up too much of the patient's time with some kind of a healing mini game, but at the same time, do you really want to just fly a ship around that is basically just a glorified passenger transport? You think they just wanted in the game to get people to be quiet about it and sell them and see that being something that comes after ship launch? But I mean, they've been working on it for a while. Like, they were in white box back in 2023. They didn't have to wait. Funny enough, It was actually the very last sprint report we ever got. This is the last time they ever gave us a sprint report for Star Citizen. And then since then, it just stopped. And it sucks. But here's what they were saying then.
We've also got a brief look inside the white box progress of the RSI Apollo Medevac, which is currently in production.
So this is where, if you look here, actually, it's possible we're actually looking backwards here. These doors on the side look like they correspond with these two doors right here. You can see two doors on the side.
And I still think the
Toes.
Apollo exterior looks too damn cool to be a space ambulance. John, Ben, I'm gonna need a spider or a smuggler variant of the Apollo. And no, if you're thinking that's a hint or anything, it's not. It's just me abusing my platform and position to make a personal request.
Yeah, I would like that too. Was that the elevator for the drones, or was that just an entrance? You think so? You think this is for the drones? Thought that might be a ladder, but you might be right. You hope with the Apollo they release, we get Tier 0 drones, but have to keep expectations low. Yeah, I feel you. You don't understand Death of a Spaceman if they're going to have better medical gameplay. Why not? Hey, the Poets, thank you so much for the sub on Twitch, dude. 24 months, 2 freaking years. Wow. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for the support. Hope you and the fam are doing well, my friend. Fam's a complicated thing, isn't it? You pick up a smuggler variant. I want to explore in this ship. I think that would be cool. But that's basically the last thing we got. And when was this? This is October 2023. So I feel like at that rate, they probably could have released it last year, but they held it back. And I'm really hoping that was for drones. I don't even know what to hope for, though. And this was a sneaky placement of the Apollo interior. At the time, they said they passed the gray box reviews with a focus on ensuring each medbed module tier is distinct without being disruptive, different to use. Okay, so they're sticking with the modulars. Past gray box review, so pretty far along in May. They're probably almost done visually. It comes stock with tier 3 beds, but you can upgrade them to tier 1 or 2.
The RSI Apollo is a new medical ship. It's from RSI, which didn't get a new ship in a long while. We have two medical ships at the moment announced in the game, which is the Cutlass Red, which is basically the ambulance in our game, and the Endeavour with its hospital module, which is really massive and really endgame. So we needed something in between.
We had quite a short timeline on this one for a medium ship. So really early on, I did a quick sketch of the interior, passed it to concept artist and was like, something like this, and it kind of stuck basically. And it works well with RSI styling. The ship still has its flow, you know, it's still quite sleek and sexy, but you know, it's got all that angularness to it. It's like a Lamborghini, turn it into a spaceship.
The RSI Apollo is basically like a small clinic that you can go to the edge of space. This has a capacity of 6 patients with 6 beds, a crew of 2 at the front with 2 ejection beds, and it has a size 2 turret on the top of the ship at the rear, which is more a point defense turret rather than something made for dogfights or anything. And this is a remote turret.
Yeah, short turnaround on it was definitely a marketing choice. Why is there a short turnaround for a concept art?
It has also 28 SCU of cargo at the back.
And then you've got medical bay space. It's always that sort of fine line between sort of reality sci-fi and gameplay. So it's, okay, we need to basically spawn a player here, but we don't want him popping in.
Yeah, so it looks like those doors are at the back side and the elevator we saw is at the front there.
So the player will be delivered.
There's the elevator. Looks like it's straight in the middle.
There's a glass cover on top, sort of protecting the player. The thought process is that we'll have essentially like an opaque glass when there's nobody in it, and then you'll hear noises and probably lights will come on, and the bed will activate, and then a person will arrive. The glass turns transparent, and you're like, okay, that, you know, the bed's occupied. At least that's how we've developed it at the moment. It's kind of like a self-healing unit, so you'll have a disc that scans the person, finds out what's wrong with them, heals them, and then it opens up and off they go. And so with this ship, you'll be able to pick up
Now you're
people,
trapped on board an Apollo.
fix people up, shove them back out the door, you know, so it can be, you know, obviously there'll be medical gameplay.
That we plan is, even if regular ships can do something with medical gameplay, like a player could help other people in the future, you will need medical ships if you want really to pursue the medical career in the game.
The final result I'm really happy with, and it's just sort of going through it basically, and so that's just been a process of refinement, just pushing and okay, add this, tweak this, you know, all the lines. Generally, you know, you generally try and avoid parallel lines.
We've worked hard to do a good layout that will please every player and that is really aesthetically pleasing as well. So I think this is a really good ship, and this is bringing new kind of gameplay, so it looks good.
Do you know what? I kind of like playing the medic often. So, you know, I'm not quite sure how this will turn out in our game, you know, but
I think the drone just goes into the bottom of the ship and then the person appears at the top. I don't even think there's going to be a noticeable transition from the drone to the medical bay. It's just too much. Why do that? Hate it.
I just want to see it. Just want to see it in game, and just, you know, I just want to see what players do with it. But I think, you know, I can't wait to see. You know, it's not going to be like the red arrows, but you can just imagine, you know, just a whole fleet of these guys just taking off and just going off, just rescuing people, or you know, you can imagine just jumping in, massive space battle, debris everywhere, bodies just sort of floating about, you know. And then just in, you know, all the drones just popping out.
Oh God, I hate this chair.
Scooping up the people and popping them into the base of the ship. I think it could make for a really nice visual as well.
Now that's a good-looking
Just
spaceship.
terrible in the back.
RSI Apollo concept promotion begins today for all backers. And I encourage everyone not just to check the ship out, but the additional medical gameplay post going up on the robertspaceindustries.com website as well. And then stay tuned to Reverse the Verse for a live Q&A immediately following this broadcast. where we'll be talking to the designers and artists who work to bring this ship and medical gameplay to life. For ShipShape, I'm content manager.
All right, let's go back to that real quick and finish up our deep looks into the Apollo.
What ships can house? Do we anticipate? Now, obviously, until the question is always, will the ship fit in that ship? And the answer is always, until both ships are completely built, we're not going to be able to say 100%. But as well as we can anticipate, what ships do we think the Apollo will be able to nestle securely inside?
Definitely not the Polaris. That's just we were looking whether what we'd said on record about the Polaris all those years ago about it, and found this really nice fan-created image where they had extrapolated the landing pad size out of the HoloViewer model and then taken all our ships in game. And the old Cutlass couldn't fit on there, so the new Cutlass definitely won't fit on there, which means the Apollo won't fit on there. We were talking about the Endeavour earlier. Obviously, the Endeavour is not being built at the moment, so we're sort of quite flexible on what we can do with that. So we fully intend for it to fit in the module, the hangar module there. I know way back in the day when we talked about it, it was said to hold.
The ship is big. The ship is 43 meters long, 30 meters wide, and 10 meters high. It's not going to fit in many ships. Not bigger than a Connie. Like a mini Connie. I actually really like the size of this. I think 43 meters is a really good size for a ship. Kind of big for 1 to 2 people, but you could do it. It's about the size of the Spirit, I think, 39 meters. Oh no, Spirit's 47. Yeah, it's about the same as the Spirit. Or the Zeus, yeah. Thank you very much. Probably a better comparison is the Zeus. So 43 by 30. The Zeus is 45 by 34. Yeah, so it's closer to the Zeus in size. Babbitt, thank you so much for the membership on YouTube. Welcome to the club, mate. You now have access to exclusive videos and the live podcast, or you can just watch it early if you'd like. Thanks for your support. Yeah, medium-sized ships are good fun.
We just hadn't really thought about, and rather than just start the Cutlass Red and sort of put ourselves into a corner, we pushed that back. It's still some months away before we start doing it, so we got our ducks in a row with this, and then we can work out like, where does the Cutlass Red fit against this? Where does the Apollo fit against that? And make sure they're both complementary to each other.
We're in northern Turkey, not southern.
Blast the other one out of the water.
Yeah. I can imagine that in hot zones, the Cutlass Red might be a more attractive option if you're going into the middle of an active engagement.
Yeah.
And then the Apollo is coming around afterwards. Not that the Apollo can't be used in an active engagement if you're a savvy enough pilot. Anyway, but I can see a number of situations where you might prefer the Cutlass Red over an Apollo, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So. All right. One of the questions that's inundating the chat, especially from the very moment we mentioned the Endeavour, is the Endeavour had a respawn mechanic that would allow players to effectively respawn inside the Endeavour medical bay. Any talk about that functionality with regards to the Apollo?
Going to have some Dolma?
We talk about
that's like every week.
It's sort of something that comes with medical ships. as sort of a feature of their gameplay rather than. I can't remember whether the Cutlass Red came before the Endeavour or vice versa.
It came before.
Then obviously those two ships at the time were such a huge scale apart that it made sense for the Endeavour to be the higher tier. But yeah, you get it through various levels of medical gameplay. Whether it's having those tier 1 beds that allows you to bring people back from the dead is, I think, the way we'll go with it. So the Endeavour's going to have those out the box. The Apollo, you can make it be like that if you want to. The Cutlass Red, probably not, but we'll see. All stats subject to change.
And then they released the Nursa trailer.
Paul, let's talk a little bit more about the Apollo interior. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of interior with the Aurora. So when developing the style for the interior, did you have to lean on the Constellation, the Polaris much, or did you use this as an opportunity to expand the RSI style guide even further?
Yeah, it's obviously there's been a lot of work done on the Connie, and I kind of just wanted to, I mean, yes, we have done some stuff on the Polaris, and this is a little bit of a having your cake and eating it, maybe, you know, like I've taken some elements from the Polaris, and some of the shape language that works well for this, for the overall sort of like medical bays and that central room. Obviously it's medical, so we're keeping it clean in that area, but the cockpit and those sort of areas definitely will have you know, similar doors, you know, things that the fans are familiar with, door frames, buttresses. So yeah, I think it will be an advancement of the RSI visuals, but everything will still tie in.
There's a lot of the Bengal in there as well. I guess the Bengal and the Polaris sort of, they're very similar.
Yeah, and I guess it's taking, you know, it's sort of taking that sort of cross-sectional shape from the corridors and feeding that in, and so there's lots of nods.
Yeah. Follow-up question: why you hate struts?
You mean why
struts, man?
Why did we want better visibility?
Who did that?
Yeah, there's been a bit of a debate, not a long debate, but
Yeah.
it just, obviously, when we look at the constellations, there are some struts. When we look at the Apollo, it's a different kind of ship, and you need to
Go back to the bed talk.
Right now, it's just the ships in the tier 3 beds. Now, you did mention, you mentioned the tier 1, the tier 3, and stuff like that. That's related to the medical gameplay shipyard post that's going to go up later today. Obviously, we wrote a whole post, so we didn't have to sit here and talk about it, but it isn't up now. So give us the Cliff Notes version. How does medical gameplay work today in 3.2, and how are we thinking it's going to work going forward?
Yeah, 3.2 right now is fairly easy. Obviously, it evolved a bit over time. Like, it's not what we got a long time ago, but right now it's basically you get injuries or you get bleeding or whatever, and you use your Medipen or you die, basically. So that's it. We got some stuff that is already in the code, like planned for it, like for injuring limbs and stuff like this. Like, but it's not where we want to go yet. Basically, we got this plan, but obviously it's not there yet. And the thing is that what we want to do is doing some kind of permanent injuries where it's like death of a spaceman that Chris wrote a lot.
As we were reading through that, doing this post, there was quite a lot of it that is still like completely accurate today, even though it was written 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's still exactly what we plan to do. So in our heads, we had, we need to do this huge design post about how much has changed, and actually there isn't a huge amount that's changed. We sort of, the design post talks about what Corentin said, how it is now, how we want to go in the future. So there's more persistent damage, how people were going to be dealing with respawning from death and other sort of injuries, what side effects that has. why you choose to respawn as a medical ship versus going somewhere else, just things like that. Stuff that wasn't in the game when that was written, that is now that when that was written, there wasn't a huge amount in game to sort of get your mind wrapped around, whereas now there is significantly more. So there's a lot more questions that have come up since then, and we sort of cover that. It's not a huge, full, in-depth article like Death of a Spaceman's Wife. It's not Death of a Spaceman 2.0. It's more like a little.
It clarifies a
update.
lot of
It's like an
things.
appendix.
Yeah.
Kind of. Now, one of the things that we're introducing in that post is the concept of the tier 1, the tier 2, and the tier 3 injury states to the player. Tier 3 sounds much like what we have in 3.2 now with limb damage, where it goes from like normal to hurt to damaged to your crap's just ruined. Yeah. And right now your player dies, but in the future your player won't die. They'll enter some non-death state, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tier 2 from that is.
I think if they're going to release the Apollo, these missions need to come into the game. Like, they just need to have medical missions in the game, or medical ships. That includes medical deliveries with medical supplies, organs, samples, and more. Medical ships will have the specific facilities to keep them good, probably depending on engineering and your ability to change the temperature. Recovery missions, finding people and healing them. And rescue missions, rescuing people in emergency situations. These all need to have NPC contract support if they're going to put the Apollo into the game, in my opinion.
A more serious injury. What can you tell us about tier 2?
Tier 2 is sort of, at the moment, when you get to that final state in our limbs, the ruined state, you sort of lose functionality, but you can heal with your Medipen and that goes away. Tier 2 is, that won't go away just from injecting yourself with a pen. You're going to have to start getting some serious medical support, otherwise you're losing massive functionality, like being able to hold stuff or being able to jump, sprint. So that's your sort of, if you don't get healed quickly enough, there's going to be long-term effects for that.
And then tier 1 being the near-death experiences.
Yeah, tier 1 is something has gone badly wrong and you need to get help stat, otherwise you're going to die, and then you're going to have even more problems when you come back, beyond having presumably lost your ship that you were in, or you were just on a planet somewhere and got taken out. I think Death of a Spaceman talked about a lot of persistent, like if you repeatedly kill yourself or get killed, that this sort of starts accumulating persistent effects, and that's very much the case. So tier 1 medical equipment is like you see like traditional big sci-fi healing machines like in Elysium and things like that. That sort of tier of
Don't talk to me about Elysium.
have you got nightmares about that scene?
I hated that movie. I hated that movie. Apparently, like nobody who wrote that movie knows that you can't just turn a computer off and it loses everything in its memory. Anyway, Paul.
Hello.
This ship is red. We don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of. We don't have a lot of color. We don't have a lot of real striking visages in our ships. It's commentary that's been made for some time on our ships. This is a very striking profile. I want to talk to you about the livery, how we got there, and why. We have an image, actually, JJ, if you can put that up. We got an image of several different versions. It looks like 13 different versions before we ended up with the one that we did. Why don't you?
Well, let's go back to this Death of a Spaceman focus. No, I think did Rich? No, they should have talked about it for the 1.0 talk last year. I don't believe they did. Piracy, ownership. Death of a spaceship. What about Death of a Spaceman?
A cooldown for transferring you need to listen to. Component insurance. And level 3, chassis, component, and decorations insurance, where taxes and insurance come in. Boo! We'll have 2 main taxes. Inheritance tax, as part of Death of the Spaceman, and security tax for your base that will cover the cost of planetary shield
Yeah,
tech.
literally, that's the only thing they say is the inheritance tax. Looks like we get a mention here.
Into new content, and most importantly is as we come to Death of a Spaceman, there's going to be things that you want to be able to test out without having to risk your life. So we can't just maintain the mode, we want to improve it and to re-excite people about it.
So this is just about that arena commander is going to give you some Death of a Spaceman stuff. But I don't really see...
And the other big deal is the medical gameplay, which is really the first stage of the Death of a Spaceman, which I talked about many years ago, and that involves allowing players the ability to sort of fix up and heal people at varying levels.
Calling all devs 2020. Oh, look at that.
Halloween time, it's spooky time, and we, of course, are going to talk about Death of a Spaceman. Now, Death of a Spaceman was first introduced back in 2013. We're going to get the update on where we're at now, where we're going forward, and to do so, we have 2 esteemed guests with us in no particular order. We got Richard Tyrer from the Core Gameplay Group. Hi, Richard.
Hello, how's it going?
And this is Chris, right?
That is right.
Chris?
Yes. The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated, is what I would think would be appropriate.
What a Chris thing to say.
It's been a while since we've chatted. So this one's probably going to go a little bit long. Whatever. We're all very loquacious. So I'm going to sit back. Let's jump into this. Death of a Spaceman as a primer. Let's introduce it to people. We haven't talked about it in a while. Just what is it?
The idea with Death of the Spaceman is to try to get some kind of meaningful consequence to dying in a game. So, like, most games you play, modern games anyway, you die, you respawn back, a few seconds before you die, and you keep on doing it again. So it doesn't really feel like there's much consequence to dying, and a lot of times your gameplay approach is pretty sloppy. I mean, like, I know when I'm playing a standard FPS shooter in the story mode, I just keep blasting into people. I don't really think about it. I die, I start again. Whereas if you play, a game like, say, for instance, Demon Souls all the years ago and all the ones past it, there's real consequence. I mean, you die, and you've got to fight back through all those enemies. You've lost all the experience that you've gained, the souls in the case of Demon Souls. But the thing with Demon Souls, and it was one of the things I was playing. It reminded me of the good old, the days in the 80s and the 90s when you'd make games, and dying had a real consequence. You wanted to finish your level before you died, or else you had to do the level again, right? So, and consequently, when you finished the level or achieved something, you really felt, proud and happy doing yourself, which is definitely, I think one of the mechanics that makes Demon Souls and its subsequent games, both infuriating and rewarding when you manage to do it. So kind of the idea was like, what kind of consequence can we have in our persistent universe in terms of how do we encourage the players to stay alive? How do we encourage the players to keep their ship or repair their ship intact? We don't want people to just go, oh, I got a scratch, I'm just going to respawn in a perfectly pristine state for the character or the ship. And so Death of the Spaceman was sort of an idea to give an association with your player character in the game, in terms of this is who you are, and you want to keep yourself alive as possible, as much as possible, and identify with your avatar as an actual real person and character, and you care about and you want to keep alive. And then finally, when you've had one too many close calls or lost one too many battles, you no longer can be resuscitated, and you have to pass on essentially to your next of kin, which will have you call out basically who your next of kin is when you're sort of doing your character creation. And that idea is whether it's passing it down to your son or your daughter or a relative or a friend or whatever it would be, you call that out. And when that does, your possessions and reputation kind of pass down, but not all of them, right? So there's always like there's inheritance tax, and there's the sins of the father aren't fully invested on the son, but there's a little bit of that. And so, the idea would be, you would want to, live as long and a healthy life as possible before you pass on to your progeny or whatever. And so that was the inspiration of Death of the Spaceman, to really give a sense of, kind of close association with your avatar and your character. And, if at the end of the day, you've got to be there at your, essentially, the God view of the funeral of the character that you spent a year or so venturing around Star Citizen, there should be a tear in your eye when it happens. And so that was the goal. And so it was really a mechanic of how can we do that inside the game, inside our science fiction setting, which was coming up with this concept of in the future, with all the medical science we have, in states that you may consider you would be dead now, you would not be able to be brought back to life or repaired. Potentially we could do that in the future, but maybe we could only do it so many times. And so, in some ways, it's a little like the old school of you've got so many lives, right? And once your lives are done, the game's over. And the concept was that the maybe the more the worse the death, you're in some big fireball. That's more serious in terms of the lives you lose off your character than it would be if you were down and bleeding out and someone came and got you and managed to repair you, fix you up in a medical table or a hospital. And the idea would be, you would want to not run out of lives, and potentially there could be things you could do over time, go get some gene therapy or whatever that maybe add a life back to you or whatever. But I'm talking.
Sorry, I was muted. I think that's really crucial, that they're planning on having ways for you to get lives back or to improve your score of how much you can respawn, because people think this is just like a way to kill off your character quickly, but I genuinely think they want you to have the same character for quite a long time in this game, and they just want you to consider that character's life is slowly ticking down. Like, it could be 40 lives that you have, right? But if you see that bar slowly shrinking over the course of 2 years, then you start to think more about it. And then on top of that, most of the times that we actually take on damage will not be actually dying. We'll just be going down and getting back up. This stream pauses every 30 seconds. That can't be possible because I'm going back like 4 minutes to answer some questions right now. Hope you and your lady are doing well. The Bay Area will be a better place when you both return. We can't wait to be back, my friend. Thank you. You like the concept of having long-term consequences, but only the game is not crashing from time to time. Yeah, that's a big one. I think what they should do right now is just focus on getting the respawn resources in. So you need a certain amount of resources in order to get your respawn to actually work. So like the Apollo would have to have that regular consumption of those resources. I think they should also do the inheritance tax, so we start to get a little less backspacey. But for that, they really need to get this playability up, specifically stability and glitches that kill you.
lives in a gamer sense here, but in general, we're trying to put it inside the fiction of the world. But the idea is to have real persistence to your avatar and, you know, wear and tear. It's also one of the reasons why we've got things like wear in the game. It's essentially one of the things that we have for equipment, we're gonna have for characters. You know, you're gonna get older, things are gonna get old, and, you know, all of that. We have parts of that in the game, but it's not fully working. But that's all systems that are on the plan or we need to turn on properly, because that's part of the problem with what we're doing right now is we're building this, you know, incredibly complicated, interconnected sort of simulation system, and not all the pieces are there quite yet. So even though we built some of the pieces and we can functionally do stuff with them, because the other pieces aren't there, the whole system doesn't work yet. And that is actually one of the challenges of building a game the way we're building it, sort of, well, people are playing it and we're building it. And Death of a Spaceman is a good example, because it's something that, you know, I talked about at the very beginning as a core concept. It's always been a core concept, but we're only just now getting around to starting to implement the actual functionality and the gameplay features that will enable it. And I think when you have it, that will make people behave very differently in the verse, which is going to be super cool.
Yeah. Now, you buried the lead there at the end. That's big news. We are now beginning the process of actively putting this into development. It's been this idea, it's been this core tenet of Star Citizen's character since it was first introduced. You just gave us a wonderful refresher, so the page is still on the website. If you haven't read it, you want to read even more detail, you can check that out, but that basically brings everybody up to speed with where we're at here. Now, Richard, we are beginning the process of putting these things into active development, of that process where we're going to start working on it, start testing these ideas, building our Tier 0 implementations. Where do we start?
So, well, we've already kind of started. So, body dragging was the first feature.
To be honest, I don't think this game is for the common player. Like, I think this is a more deep game than just your casual person looking for a space game to play. Those kinds of people should be trying out something like Starfield or even like Elite Dangerous.
That kind of gave you the premise to be able to manipulate dead bodies. But as Chris calls out, you know, death is going to be a really important factor in Star Citizen. Now, death, there's kind of 3 deaths along the spectrum. There's kind of what we're calling like the down state. So that's kind of like when your health has gone to 0 and you're there. And in that, when you're in that scenario, you'll be able to kind of choose to kind of stay there and be like, okay, I need my buddies to come and rescue me. I need the, law enforcement to come and help me, or maybe I've paid for some insurance that rescues my body or something like that. Then there is the kind of like you've died in terms of you've given up the ghost, nobody's coming, you're like, okay, that's it, I'm leaving that body there and I'm going to go back to a hospital and be revived. But that's kind of part of your DNA. That DNA is kind of going to be reimpregnated into essentially a clone of you. And then you'll be able to then go back to your location and you'll be able to see, your dead body there. And as long as nobody's been there, you'll be able to retrieve your gear and so on and so forth. And then the third aspect in terms of like you passing on to your next of kin and that kind of thing. So what we're actually evaluating now is kind of how this is integrated into kind of like the core healing gameplay and the actor status. So we already did kind of some of the actor status with, temperature in terms of hypothermia and hyperthermia and things like, starvation and things. And what we want to do now in terms of the next iteration of this is what we call like the healing and actor status T1. And what that will do is introduce drugs. So you'll have a blood drug level and you'll be able to manipulate things, but it will also introduce all the different statuses that are surrounding you as a character. So for example, when you're in battle and you take a really bad wound to the arm, you might say, okay, I've got a fracture, so my arm, I've got a permanent fracture. I'd have to go back to the hospital to get that repaired. Otherwise, I'm going to start to suffer some status effects that is surrounding that. But if you keep taking damage and you keep taking more damage, that fracture might turn into an actual break, and then it might turn into actually coming out of your arm kind of thing. And the level of that status will dictate the level of cover and level of healing that you need to go and basically get that healed. So you can go to a med bay and get them repaired, but it also allows other people to act as like support roles and come to say help you. And let's say you've got a really bad broken leg, which means that you can't walk anymore because You know, you haven't just like fallen over and taken a little scratch. You've repeatedly taken damage in your leg and not gone you've not gone to heal it, because medipens, for example, will no longer just be like, oh, I'm a medipen, I'm full health. You will have these permanent statuses like hypothermia and hypothermia, and so you'll have to have those will only be able to be removed when you go to these locations, either a medical bay in a ship or a medical bay at these hospital locations. So when essentially you go into that downed state, that's where body dragging will come in, so that people can come in and drag your body back to the medical facility. We're going to have obviously the medical gun in terms of the multi-tool attachment. We'll be able to inject essentially the material that's inside the medipens, but a stronger version of that. So the medipens will basically turn into something that is kind of stabilizing you in the moment. You know, you'll still be able to like replenish your health, but if you've got a bleed or something like that, it'd be like a clotting agent that stops that bleed, and that kind of allows you to get back to safety. And at that moment in time, you can then go, okay, do I want to push on? But I've got this status effect that's kind, causing, if I go back to the fracture arm, my weapon's now swaying more, and similar to how we had the eyeball effects with the other things, and that progression of the active status T1 in terms of the different limb statuses that you're going to have in terms of whether you've got a traumatic brain injury, whether you've got leg injuries, whether you've got arm injuries, whether you've got internal bleeding in terms of your organs. The level of those statuses will basically go up and go up to the point of view where you're like, I can no longer function now, and I need somebody to come out. And you'll have plenty of opportunity to back out. So it's not going to be something that's going to be like, oh, hello, you've broken your legs, and that's it. It's going to be something like the other active statuses that is like, okay, you're going to have junction points where you can make a decision where you're like, should I go on? And it's that moment like in the Arctic, I'm close to the edge, but I might lose my toes. So, if
he said the word,
what we're working on right now is that kind of like healing circle and that healing gameplay. And it also allows that cooperative gameplay that when you do go into this down state, which covers like it's the first version of the 3 death states kind of thing, that's the state where you really you don't want to go to the next stage, because as soon as you go to the next stage, that is what Chris touched on in terms of like, it's almost like the DNA integrity, because you're going to go to the hospitals. When we release this, it'll be your hospitals will be live in the locations. You'll be able to go to these hospitals and almost like download your DNA matrix into the hospital database and say, okay, like if my body is unrecoverable or my friends can't get to me, then I'm gonna kind of die and have to be recloned into this body. That my DNA is gonna have to be re-imprinted into this shell. And during that process, that's the process where your DNA can kind of fracture or kind of lose some of its integrity. And that is kind of what Chris touched on in terms of like, you're losing a life in terms of gameplay terms. So, and that is what's happening as it's being imprinted into you. And depending on the manner of your death, and depending on like, oh, if you've just been ignoring all of these statuses and all of your arms don't work and your legs don't work and you've got a brain bleed, some of that DNA integrity as it's been injected back into your body can be re-inherited from those basically systemic statuses that you've had. And that means that you might come back in your body with a prosthetic arm, or you might come back that your eye color has changed, or you're not as tall as you used to be, and because there's something that's gone wrong with that DNA imprinting. So that's kind of what we're working towards now in terms of that hospital healing gameplay loop, active status, the extension of the active status system that we went live with before, and obviously body dragging and all of that kind of setting your spawn point in terms of game terms and the live. That's the stuff that we're working on right now. And to be honest, that's going to be a significant
Hold
change.
on a second.
All of that kind of what we went live with before, and obviously body dragging and all of that kind of we went live with before, and obviously body dragging and all of that kind of setting your spawn point in terms of game terms and the live. That's the stuff that we're working on right now. And to be honest, that's going to be a significant change in how people play the game, because when you go to the next or the third stage, where you're shedding your tear, I'm not shedding my tear at the character I've lost. I'm shedding my tear at the inheritance tax that I've just been levied.
Which is literally the thing that they said, the only thing they said about Death of a Spaceman. So the inheritance tax is a really important part to them. But I think this concept is less about your character dying and more about the psychological effect of the possibility. I don't think they want us to die that much. I think they just want us to think about it.
And it's at that stage, that permanent permanent death where you're having to pass on to your next of kin, where it is, the sins of the father, you're still going to have some of your reputational statuses, but they may not be as high as they were, because it's like, oh, your dad was part of XYZ, but you're going to have to prove yourself. And so and that kind of loop is a really unique aspect in terms of an MMO, and that really ties into that, death has a real meaningful consequence. Like in Demon Souls, the amount of times you get to the boss and you're like, you get to that 1%, and your palms are sweaty and you're moving the mouse and you're like, no, that all of a sudden changes. When you get to the edge of that cave and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go in there, and if I find something in there that's not friendly to me, then I'll just respawn. No, now it's going to be like, well, if I respawn, what happens to my ship? Am I going to lose my gear? I'm going to have to come back to it, because obviously physical inventory ties into it, and then, oh, will I lose some of my DNA integrity, and how's that? And all of a sudden, it changes the choices you make along the journey that you're going on, and that is critical.
Yeah, one of the other things we're doing is that we're not going to be despawning player bodies anymore. So when you die, the body that's there and all the equipment will stay there. So if you end up having to be sort of recloned, you could essentially go back to where you died and recover some of your stuff and see the skeleton of your previous incarnation. But the other thing I would say is that the cost of sort of the new life, basically, and you're only going to have so many of these because they degrade, is much more than getting rescued or having someone come and grab you and fix you up. So there will also be an economic incentive to live, to essentially not just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to respawn, because A, you're only going to get a very limited number of those, and B, they're going to be very expensive. So you would prefer to have other players or your friends.
See, he said you're going to get a very limited number of those. I don't really believe that.
Or a service come and get you and fix you up. And I think that'll be really useful and important, because even in gameplay, okay, if I'm now exploring in a corner of the universe that doesn't really have a lot of people, my level of risk there is much higher than if I'm in the middle of a really well-traveled area of space. I think in terms of gameplay, things like finally getting around to the full sort of health, death of a spaceman setup and the physical inventory, the gameplay potential and just what's going to happen and the interplay with players is there's not other games that I think of that quite have all this stuff all together to do this at this level of detail. And I personally, I just think I'm super excited to have these come together. I mean, we talked about them for a long time. Obviously, it's taken a while, but that's because we're building something incredibly high fidelity with all this detail, but with all this scope. But it really will change a lot of the gameplay mechanics. A lot of how people are playing the game right now, just you wouldn't want to do. It just wouldn't make sense. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, and hopefully you can see some of the method to the madness of the development, because it's not like, hey, overnight we go, hey, let's just add this cool thing. It's like, okay, it's underpinning these things. So when we add actor status, when we add eating and drinking, when we add physical inventory, when we add the ability to hold things in the hand from the grenade from throw T1, all of that is tying into the bigger picture of what we want to achieve. And that core gameplay loop of, I'm not just stepping into my ship and flying into space and I could just open my PMA and just have access to everything I want, and there's no consequence, there's no feeling of that you're in the world because of you have this access to this infinite bag of holding. This consequence of I'm going on a real adventure, the things that I take with me are the things that I have access to. The ships that I have dictate how much storage I have and how much, what I have access to inside those ships. Do I have a kitchen that provides me food and drink? Do I have a medical bay? Am I got room to take a buddy with me? Is he going to wear support armor that allows more replenishment of the medical gun, that can revive me when I'm down in the cave and we can get out together? All of a sudden that becomes not just a single player, I've just got access. All of a sudden those shared experiences are the things that make it a true experience. And that is something that all of these individual systems, in isolation, they're really cool, and we put a lot of effort and a lot of heart into them, and they're complex because we want it to be scalability on a size of Star Citizen. But when you pull them all together and they start talking to each other and they start, okay, have you got space for the amount of food and drink you need? Have you got space for ammo? What guns are you taking? Am I going to take the grenade launcher? Well, I can only fit so many, magazines of that. Well, maybe I should take an energy rifle because that recharges. And all of those different decisions, all of that ties into making it, that's when all of a sudden you go, hold on a minute, the game was already there. We just needed to have these systems start talking to each other.
I feel like at some point we need to rebrand this to the life and death, and then in parentheses, and taxes of a spaceman.
I think they need to change the name completely. People get too scared from the name.
Ultimately, we do joke a little bit about, but the goal with Star Citizen is to, essentially
Star Death.
It's a virtual life. And we are trying to simulate, or obviously in a more primitive state than the real world, but simulate all the things that would happen. Like naturally, you would think, okay, if I'm going to go to the Antarctic, I've got to bring my supplies with me. I've got to worry about if I get hurt and all these things that I think create great gameplay opportunities and also great cooperative gameplay opportunities, right? So there's a lot of things that we talked about that clearly, if you're going to be adventuring in a dangerous place, having the equipment and having people with you is probably a good thing, because otherwise something goes wrong, you're by yourself. And so I feel like when we get a lot of, there's been a lot of engineering just on the very low level and some scalable stuff that we have to do to enable a lot of these systems. And, but over the next year or 2 years, we've got a lot of this stuff sort of coming online. And I feel like when they all start interoperating together, that it will be an experience like no other. I don't know another game that does it to the level. There's some games that do, some really nice. Red Dead Redemption 2 is great. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that sort of does elements of this, but I think not to the scope and the level and the detail that we're doing. And that's one of the reasons why it's taking so long. So, that is, it's definitely taking longer than I'd like it to do. And it's part of my frustration when, people are like, well, where's my gameplay loops? And I'm like, but, it's going to be so awesome. You've got all these elements, and, I know the big picture. I know how they're all going to pull together. And it's just one of the things that when you're making a game live, developing in front of people, that people experience you wouldn't normally. Normally, most game developers will tell you in the old way, certainly was when I was making the Wing Commanders and all the rest of stuff, and Richard probably can opinion on on all the ones that he was making, that the game really only comes together near the end, right? So you work on all these disparate parts, and you do it for years, especially in today's world. People work on it for years and years and years, and then it really only comes together sort of kind of in that sort of alpha to beta stage. And we're sort of, I know we say we're alpha, but we still got a lot of features to come. And normally a traditional alpha would be you've got your features there, but you don't have all your content polished, and then beta is all content and features are in there, and you're working on the bugs. So a lot of it doesn't. Wing Commander, you weren't playing through until a couple of months before we released the game, and it was all in different pieces. But in the way we do Star Citizen, people see us develop all these pieces in different parts, and they go, well, why you got that? That just seems silly that you're focusing on this aspect over here when I don't have this other thing over here. Well, we have a plan. They're all working. We're working on all those pieces, and when they all come together, it's going to be a great experience. You already there's elements of it now, so you can sort of go around an event, run around the verse, and yes, there's going to be a lot more, but there's already fun stuff to do, and there's the social aspect of it. And I see amazing videos every single day. It's like one of the funnest things for me to see cool videos by whoever. Like there was one that Tarada just did, and on 311 that was shared around here, and there was someone. Anyway, the point is, there's just really cool stuff that people are doing with the sandbox we're building, even though the sandbox isn't finished. But whether it's me or Richard or Todd Pappy or Tony Zurovec, we're all operating at the level of we see the matrix. We just haven't built all the elements of the matrix yet. But we know it's coming together, and when it's done, it'll be like this amazing simulation. And our only frustration is because there's It's not like me and Richard are like, oh yeah, guys, take longer. It's like me and Richard and Todd and everyone else are like, is it really going to take you that long to do that feature? You sure you can't do that in half the time? So we're always on their case. So I know everyone out there is on our case.
The answer was never
but
yes.
It's sort of like we're on the other way around. But some of this stuff just takes time to build it, to test it, and also to do it when you're doing it in a live game, right? Because we are building it in a live game, so you can't just break everything by introducing a new feature. You've got to make sure the old features work as well. But to be honest with you, it's actually a fun way to do it, because a lot of how we're doing it also informs our development as we go along. Because yes, we've got our big plans, but some of the feedback we get helps tweak how things are coming in, or what areas we'll address, or what things worked well, or what things didn't work well that we need to adjust. And if you were doing it the old way, you wouldn't get that feedback. You'd just basically put it all out there. It'd be your best shot at it, and then you'd be like, oh shit, well, we gotta fix this thing or improve this thing, and So I like it, and also just people experiencing what we're building so far is awesome for the team as well, because the team, they get all inspired when they see cool stuff that the community is doing. So there's upsides and downsides to what we're doing, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because I think it's one of the funnest things I've ever done in games, and it's awesome.
Talking about reading the Matrix, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm the guy sitting here for 6 years now trying to do an online correspondence course, how to read the Matrix. Every week, just I gotcha. We are at time at this point. The wonderful thing about interviewing either Chris or Richard is that I come with all these questions, and I only ever have to ask one, because then they just kind of hit everything. I'm like, I don't have to ask that. I don't have to ask that. Before we let you go, just one final thing. For some folks, this is going to be kind of a new idea. For many folks, they've been following along with this since 2013. As Richard said, we're building this out actively. We have been. All of these active feature things are all laying the groundwork. They're all the foundation for this. When this is done, it's not going to be like a big switch. There's not going to be one day there's not Death of a Spaceman, and then the next day there is Death of a Spaceman. These things will come in iterations, just like anything else does. Tier 0 of cybernetics, Tier 0 of hospital, stuff like that. One last bit of expectations setting. Without giving dates or anything.
Oh God.
What can people expect going forward? How do we go from here? What's the plan from here, generally speaking?
I'll let you take this, Richard, so I don't get in trouble.
Yeah, okay. So what we're planning on working on in the future, so relatively soon, shall we say, is kind of the hospital groundwork. So the hospitals in the locations, the ability for you to be able to go to those hospitals and kind of download your DNA is kind of like your save point, or kind of like the area where you would be respawned. We already obviously have body dragging in and some of the medical bays in there, but what we'll be introducing is active status T1. So that will be drugs. So for example, we'll be introducing some drugs as part of that. So like adrenaline. I think we've already got some black market drugs in there that will tie into this, but also like alcohol. So if you go to the bartender, you'll be able to get drunk, and we'll have the relevant animations and locomotion sets that tie into that. Because obviously then there'll be a risk reward that you can't just keep medipenning like you can't in real life. You can't just keep popping paracetamol, all of that kind of thing will kind of tie into it in terms of that blood drug level. And that will, if you keep taking drugs, you will eventually, overdose and you'll need to be revived. So you'll have to manage that on that actor status side of things. And we'll also be introducing the healing loop in terms of those being able to revive you from a down state. And obviously that in the DNA integrity side of things. So as you basically die, you'll be able to have battle through revive, so we can bring you back in the same body, and that is obviously you'll be there, but you may come back with you may have a permanent visuals, but that won't be part of T0, the visuals, just to be clear. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're working on, that core gameplay loop, actor status T1, and hospital locations. Those are the three main big kind of like areas that we're trying to push forward on, and hopefully alongside physical inventory, which is we're also actively working on. I mean, I've done multiple talks on, and I think every patch we do something to do with either updating the UI, and all of that is in along the journey. We've just been releasing small bits, but that will tie into it. So the kind of like healing active status, hospitals, and physical inventory, those kind of things will kind of come hopefully
October
kind of come
2020.
as one thing to be able to deliver that experience. But if they don't, then we'll make it work as they come. But that's kind of the stuff we're actively working on right now.
Right. And then one more follow-up. Earlier you said that sometimes when you res, you might come back shorter. Were you just giving an example, or are you confirming short characters?
I was giving an example. Definitely not confirming.
You know people
or
were going to grab
denying.
onto it, and there was going to be a Reddit thread, so I had to ask. All right. Thank you, guys, so much. I'll let you go. Take care.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Have a
Thanks
good
for
one.
your time.
Bye-bye.
So from there, we do have actually another page they dropped. Now this is more lore focused, but it does talk a little bit about some of this stuff. So here we say, while a lot of scenarios could have been explained away by diligent NPC emergency response teams finding injured players and bringing them back to civilization, with a game like Star Citizen, and this post is what, 2 years old, 3 years old, I think? 4 years old almost. But this is what we work with right now in the game. There were a lot of cases where even the bravest ambulance pilots wouldn't have been able to retrieve you. Imagine a bold explorer flying themselves directly into the sun, or some friendly outlaws firing a size 9 torp directly at your head. What ambulance is going to rescue you from that? While we could have declared those instances to be permadeaths and forced the player to hand off everything to their next of kin, we were worried about how punishing this would be for players new to playing the game. We're over here talking about any amount of limitations might be bad for players. This is why it was decided that Star Citizen needed to have technology akin to cloning, where players could bring their avatars back from death itself, but with a few key requirements the lore would have to address. First, your avatar's memories have to be passed on. No point in making a biological copy if they can't remember anything. Second, the process needed to degrade over time so that people in the universe are not immortal. Third, how your avatar perished should be reflected in their new body. If you got blown up, we wanted to see those scars and cybernetic limbs. We also wanted characters to age and not just hop into younger versions of themselves, and there should only be one copy of somebody at a time. No clone armies. So, with that explained, Loremaker community questions posts. Interesting. Wonder if that... With that explained, the biggest thing to note is the imprint viability score here, IVS. So this says, this is the number used to rate the viability of an imprint to be used in regeneration. Owing to the degradation experienced from echoes, imprints eventually become so damaged they are no longer viable, and the individual will no longer be able to be regenerated. Using higher quality imprints and equipment helps prolong a patient's IVS. And Chris also mentioned you can earn some of that back as well. So I think this is the key. This will be some kind of a bar or a number that progresses every time you lose a cycle. And you're just kind of watching it and hoping that it doesn't reach zero. And when it does reach zero, you just pay a bunch of money. There you go. I don't know what people are so terrified of with this, or why people think this is going to be some terrible thing, because literally the only thing that matters here is that you're going to pay money. They've already confirmed to us that there will be ways for us to customize our characters after the fact. So like if you like your character, you can just go and make the next character look the exact same, have the same name, and you get all your stuff back. So I think this freaks people out more than it should, because people think that they're somehow gonna like never be able to have their character again, but you could just customize your character to look the same. Yeah, reputation will take a hit as well. You're right. Money and reputation. Two real ways to progress. If it's just money, why does it matter? Exactly. Why are people making such a big deal out of it? I don't know. I see how it matters to the people making the game, because it's like a little bit of something that you're paying attention to. But this isn't like some kind of a game ruining thing that's forever going to stop you from progressing anymore. It's just a little hit on the different things you're using for progression. Money and rip. But yeah, best death of a spaceman. So it seems pointless. Does a health bar seem pointless? It's just another thing to pay attention to. For a lot of people, it will be pointless. And I think that's kind of the point, is like, it'll sneak up on you if you're not paying attention to it. But for the most part, it's just something to track, something to change slightly the way that you're playing. Change the things you're considering. When is Verse Project gameplay? Was going to do it this week, but I don't think I'm actually going to have time. So hopefully we'll get to that next week. Where's Tony Z? Not working with the company. I think the tax will be fairly significant, yeah. Klingons, huh? Good to slow inflation. Exactly. They need these money sinks. This was like when they were specifically talking about money sinks, one of the things they mentioned was the inheritance tax. I don't really talk about it here. This is the other thing. Resources for respawning. This advanced regenerative distillate is used as a base material from which cells, tissues, and organs can be bioprinted for use in regeneration. Medical ships will probably have to keep this stocked, whether through crafting or buying. Will it be live or video? I'll play it live. Death is a money sink. And a rep sink. I forgot about that. The reputation loss is more significant than the money, I would think. But it's also kind of nice because the way they say it is like, if you lose your rep when you die, it's kind of a chance for you to take your new character and do something different. Start working with other companies. Get off the reputation you had before. You understand the knee-jerk reaction people have from the perspective of roleplay. You're presented with opportunity to live a life in space, but permadeath wipes that sense of continuity. But it's not really permadeath, is it? I mean, what is death in a game? Like, when you guys think of permadeath, what is it that you're losing when you permanently die? That's the most important thing. A lot of people will say my character. Okay. Remake your same character. Some people might say my items. You're going to just lose the stuff that you died with. All your other stuff's still stored, right? Your sweet mullet? Actually, I don't think we can help you with that. Sorry. Thing you always point to is the success of Elden Ring, which is a very hardcore game compared to Ubisoft. There is a huge desire for these types of uncompromising experiences. I think so. Concerned that it'll be abused as a way for criminals to clean their reputation for free. You're concerned that it will encourage shooting first instead of taking chance to talk. You think people will shoot first more with this than they do now? Morning, Slay J. Would you rather that when you die, the game just ends? Yeah, you just get completely kicked out. You have to buy a new account. You created Jack and suddenly Jack is dead and you won't get back to that because the game said so. I guess. If you're extra created though, just rename your new character Jack and be like, I came back. You make a new character and you still have the same call sign. Seems strange. You probably, well, you'll have the same ships, right? Because you're using the same ships you had before. You mean like the same name in game? Maybe they won't let you rename your character. Right? That would be weird. You think people will shoot first more with this if death is more punishing than killing someone else? That's just the way it will go. Oh, I mean, killing somebody else is going to be more punishing. Don't forget the law system. Concept of losing a bit of yourself upon revival is just unnecessary. I'll agree with you there. It's unnecessary. I am glad they're taking that choice, though. I like the consequences. So that was a big old tangent that came from just looking at the Apollo briefly. Any other questions for today, guys? Maybe you could see the lore questions they answered. Regen. There are plenty of places outside the law. And that is why I think that, I think that is the key. Once you get outside of protected space, you're in more hardcore areas. Stay inside a protected space, you get a more forgiving experience. Kind of nice to be able to specify geographically. Person asked, how do you plan to introduce tension and suspense into the narrative? Everyone is functionally immortal. No one can die. How do you write around that? And that's where they're talking about this. May currently feel like everyone's immortal in game right now because the mechanic hasn't been fully implemented, but the regen system should have plenty of interesting wrinkles that create tension. Loss of a ship or frantic race to retrieve a precious or valuable item following a death is another. We're hitting up the Lazarus Worm this week. I believe Vassin is hosting a run. Barrett Planet in Stanton is Arcwork. I'm hoping the next tier of item recovery comes with either 4.3 or 4.4. I guess it's closer to 4.4 though. You know, they removed legacy caves to prepare for Planet Tech V5. Removed legacy caves? Like, what? What are legacy caves? I thought they updated them all. Okay, thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Death of a spaceman's a good incentive for a PvPer to spam kill you. I'll have to make sure that the law system counteracts. Oh, the old big caves? Like, Gudra Ore? They removed that? Hey, Hyatt Amsterdam. Good to see you, mate. Well, I mean, I think CIG needs to make murder, specifically murder, in this game, a very, very consequential act if you're in a monitored space. Like, I think it should be an immediate 5-star death squads being sent your way. Overpowered turrets are shooting at you. Like, murder needs to be something that is incredibly looked down upon per the rules of the game. And the more consequential you can make murder, maybe the less people will do it. Law system is complete trash right now. Yeah, how about the death of a spaceman system? Hey, Tygon, doing all right? Hope you're doing well. If you put someone who cares about their character in a roleplay sense versus a murder hobo that sees it as a KD rank competition against each other, who wins? Murder hobo. But if the role player dies once, and it's 1 out of 20 deaths, and the murder hobo gets murdered by turrets and then can't come back to that place because they'll get murdered by turrets again, long term, I would hope they can make it so the PvPer loses. It's definitely going to come up with, there will be plenty of edge cases that make this crappy, I'm sure. But I don't think I've ever played a video game that doesn't have edge cases that make things crappy. I think the goal is to make this be something that feels like it doesn't matter too much, but still makes you play the game a little bit differently. Griefers can and will make alt accounts, gotta recognize that at least. True. But honestly, what's the difference? If a griefer makes an alt account and kills you multiple times with or without death of a spaceman, you're still getting killed by alt accounts. I feel like at some point we just have to be like, okay, well, there's going to be times that suck, whether it's because of a glitch, because of an asshole, or because of something else. Whether we lose 1 out of 40 lives because of that, 1 out of 20 lives because of that or not, it's still going to suck for the players. This is all part of the move, removing the armistice zones. Are we going to have areas where you can't pull out your tractor beam forever, or are we going to let people finally play the game and then have the freaking game come up with the solutions? It's going to suck at some points, but like, a game needs consequence. They once said even in monitored space, the ship Black Box would still record and be turned into the authorities. Maybe. Nine out of 10 people aren't assholes. Consequences for all will be in the favor of the 9, not 1. Hope so. Hey, Quincy. Right now, griefers usually have a main account that makes the money and they send it to their alts, fix the economy, fix the alt problem. You dig into the alt problem. Make jail actively served, as in you have to be logged in and playing, checking in, turn-ins, jail jobs, whatever it takes to force players to actively participate. There are things they can do. A lot depends on how the law works. Given how much PvP is expected and encouraged, I don't see that as a good fit with the death is rare and dramatic idea that Death of a Spaceman hinges on. I think there will be enough situations where violence is okay that death will be very common. I do think death's going to be pretty common in unmonitored space. I'll honestly say I probably couldn't make this work in a game. Hopefully CIG can. That's why I'm not making games. What is today's topic of outrage? Death of a Spaceman. Crime doesn't do anything right now. You barely get a slap on the wrist. I definitely have to change some things. All right, y'all. Any other questions besides Death of a Spaceman or the Apollo? Yeah, if you can disable people or down people without getting, like, let's say if you disable or down someone, you get a crime stat 2 with a fee of 200,000 AUEC or UEC. But if you kill someone, then you get a crime stat 5 and eventually you have to pay 5 million. What are people going to do? They're just going to disable you or down you, take your stuff and go. You're not dying, you're just losing your stuff. Why did the security NPCs stop working in 4.0? Were there security NPCs in 4.0? In like flying ships? I didn't know they were in 324. I'm guessing they stopped working because of server meshing. Apollo is meaningful only in large-scale battles where there are many casualties. What kind of event can you imagine where the Apollo could be used? Anywhere people might be getting hurt? Probably land your Apollo in the middle of the Hathor facilities and make bank. What do you say to people who backed the game before and now all they say is the game is terrible, should be way further along than this with the amount of money they have made? You don't feel that way. I just say okay. Everybody can have their feelings about how long it's taken. I think it's taken a long time too, but do I think they'll make the Apollo larger? Probably will grow a little bit. Saving 1 or 2 players, would that be meaningful for the Apollo? Maybe not. Honestly, the Apollo, it needs some missions to run in order to be truly meaningful. Medical running missions would be cool, yeah. No Apollo info, they just, it was confirmed it's coming out this year, but that's it. Yeah, and unlawful places like Pyro, it'll probably be more useful. think the security forces stopped working a while ago. But supposedly they're back in now. Honestly, I don't think they're going to do much medical gameplay in Squadron. I think it's basically whatever we have now. But we'll see. Well, Orem, I think that's a fantastic idea. I hope they do that. It seems like they've got a good list of ships that they're going to release towards the end of this year, so they're probably expecting great results. Was planning on going over this today, but I think I'll just do it another time. Looks like they are still doing phenomenally in terms of their earnings this year, which has a lot to do with all the updates and sales they've been doing. That was clearly part of their goal for the year, is to make sure that they kept the money coming in. It's like June was only beaten by 2022. And it looks like July is on par with 2022. So they 2022 was such a freaking huge year. But they're gonna probably pass what they've been doing. They might hit 120 million this year. Actually, I think it's inevitable they hit 120 million. They'll probably bump up to 130 maybe. They're about halfway, they're a little past halfway through the year. They were about 70 million at halfway through the year, so they could end up making more money towards the end. May is usually their biggest month. Not by far though, and sometimes it is November. So depending on how their November goes, they might actually hit 140 million this year. What happened in May? Invictus Week. Invictus Week always makes them a ton of money. As far as player numbers go, though, they are beating last year, but they are lagging well behind the 2 years prior. And obviously, those years benefited from the novelty. It got discovered by a lot of big streamers this year. And also, obviously, COVID kind of bumped up those first few years after 2020. Honestly, though, good for them making it past last year. I don't even think they're doing more referral rewards this year, so better. They were in a bit of a tight spot up until April. But yeah, they need to keep the quality of the game going up if they want the player count to keep going up. It's not bad for new players. They did overhaul the referral program. True. And that was in July, right? All the people buying Idrises. Did they offer more Idrises this year than you usually do? What happened in 2017? 2017 was, for those who have not been around too long, 2017 was truly the drought. We keep talking about droughts nowadays, even in the lead up to 4.0. But in 2017, there was not a single update pushed. Not a single big update. We were stuck on 2.6 for over a year because they were waiting to drop 3.0, which was at the beginning of 2018, end of 2017. They had more waves for the Idris. Yeah, 2017 was rough. They can keep playability going up. They should have a pretty solid last half of this year. All right, folks, I'm all done for the day. I'm going to pass you on to another lovely individual here. I think I saw Paul on. Oh, Super Mac is on. I never get to raid him. I'll toss y'all over to Super Mac. Been a while since we've been able to raid. So y'all have a good time over there. Enjoy yourselves. You're great people. Hope you enjoyed this stream. I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day, everybody. See you on Wednesday.